Welcome to Exhorter Podcast. We're aiming to stir up love and good works through bite-sized biblical discussion. This episode will be handed off to Nate.
Hi.
Nate, what are we going to be talking about?
Flip a coin.
Rochambeau right now. Who's going to do the episode?
Nate.
Oh.
There
Okay.
you go.
I thought we already flipped the coin earlier and it went to Kyle, and now it's me. Okay.
It's you.
Well, thank you for passing it off to me. I want to talk about something because I got in an argument with my wife about it the other day.
Nice.
Yeah. No, she and I were talking about judgment and final judgment. And she was of the opinion that final judgment happens immediately when you die. And I was of the opinion that no, it happens a little bit after that. And well, not a little bit after that, but it all happens on one day, like, the judgment day. And so anyways, this led us to a discussion about death and what happens when we die. And so that's what I want to talk about today. Is I want to talk about death and what happens when we die.
Well, that's helpful because that's been a user question before.
Oh, yeah. Very good.
What happens when you die?
Excellent.
Is the title of this episode. But it was also the title of someone's inquiry.
Yeah.
And I think that's because, there's a lot of ideas are sampled from other
from the same
religions
family.
or a lot of other thoughts out there. And so then they get all muddled up and mixed up and we get a little confused.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I think that we can even get confused within the Christian faith about, what does happen when we die? Because there are different ideas out there about that. And I have some statistics.
Ooh.
Yeah, I pulled a page out of John's book.
Nice.
I also have some scriptures, and we will be going over both.
Whatever.
Okay, so approximately 172,824 people die every day around the world.
Wait, how many?
These are 172,824.
172,000.
That's really odd that they would say approximately and then be so specific with the number. Nevertheless, and it's, I want to be somber when I read these. That many people die every day around the world. That's about 7,200 people an hour, or 120 every minute. So two every second.
It feels like the amount, the birth rate versus that, like there's an offset, global population, system there. But I guess it feels like it's light.
In the U.S., 8,990 people die every day. That's about 374 deaths per hour. Worldwide, over 62 million people die each year, and that number is increasing, which makes sense because the population is increasing. But here's the best statistic, I think, on death. 100% of people die.
Mm-hmm.
That was supposed to be a joke. It didn't work.
False.
Okay.
Enoch
and
Elijah.
Well, this is true.
Boom. Roasted.
Okay.
Lawyer.
99.9999999% of all people die.
Yeah.
Lawyer.
Okay. All right. Kyle's right.
Well,
I was
and then
wrong. I think we're both right.
What about during the rapture? I'm sure there's going to be some people,
That's a future episode of the Exhorter podcast on the rapture.
Yeah, that one will be right after.
No, I thought we were going to talk about
impropriety,
purgatory, Hades, and everything in this episode. Right?
Yeah, I was going to cover. I thought we were going to cover like the dark side of it in a future episode. That's what I was thinking. Like,
this is the light side.
Gehenna, hell, like the punishment aspect.
Well, I think we'll probably talk a little bit about that today.
Okay.
Hey,
it's your episode.
Let's see if we can get there. So here's a question for you. Why do you think we avoid talking about death, even though like it's so prevalent and everybody knows it's going to happen to everybody? Why do you think we
avoid talking about my wisdom tooth that has a very dark cavity looking spot on it? If I don't talk about it, I don't have to think about it.
Well, why don't you want to think about it, Kyle?
Because I don't want to get surgery and have it, have it removed. But if I don't talk about it, then I don't have to think about it.
And you don't want to think about it. Why?
Because it's painful.
It's painful.
And it's scary, and I don't know what it'd be like.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. John, why do you think people avoid talking about death?
It could be the uncertainty of it causes anxiety. The uncertainty of one's place in it.
Like standing, like what's going to happen to me when I die?
Personally, to me,
yeah,
I think that causes anxiety, and so I think ignorance, is one key, and I think also, the same reason why people knock on wood. There's some superstition, but there's also just some avoidance of am speaking about negative things and not wanting them to happen. I mean, sometimes people believe that if you bring things up and talk about them, the likelihood and chance of them happening are greater.
Is increased.
And so let's not talk about let's not do a will right now.
Yeah. It jinxes it.
Yeah, let's not talk about our insurance policy, life insurance policy, because if I don't have one, then I don't have to worry about it. Then it never happened, except for that's not the case. And so I think generally we avoid talking about things that we feel might increase their likelihood.
Yeah. Yeah. What shaped your earliest beliefs about what happens when we die?
The toad ride at Disneyland.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. I mean, you can go through hell and back.
Oh, do you go through hell on the toad ride?
You kind of do. You get hit with a train, you die, you go to hell, and then you like jump in a car buggy again and come back.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. A little kind of creepy for Disney.
Very, very creepy. So the toad ride shaped John's opinion about what happens when we die.
I think there's lots of things. Like our society shows lots of conflicting and interesting different perspectives about after death. Yeah. Whether you, what is it like when you see a light? Do you replay all your memories, right before death? All those kinds of things. Is it like Lost, where it's some other creepy reality? Dum dum.
Don't talk about Lost.
Don't talk about Lost. Disappointment. I don't know what has inferred mine. Probably biblically sound doctrine. But
that was what it was for me. It was like preaching early on, and that's what happened. Kyle, was there anything specific that shaped your earliest beliefs about death?
I'm probably just listening to my older brothers talk about it and bits and pieces I picked up from Bible class.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I can't, there were things later, but you're talking about my earliest. It was probably shaped by those things.
Yeah.
A lot of where I come from is based on what my brothers told me.
Oh, yeah.
But this is an interesting topic for me, okay? Because you guys are preachers and I'm not. So you guys have probably studied this a little more deeply than I have. I have grown up with a perspective that I feel is based upon biblical understanding.
Sure.
But I don't know that I've had that challenged, and I don't know that that's what you're going to come up with here. So I'm kind of like looking at it going, maybe I agree with your wife. I don't know. But I'm wondering, it's like, I'm kind of curious as we're talking about this, if you're going to also mirror some of the same perspective that I have by how I was raised.
Yeah.
But I don't think it was ever so like, I don't think I ever heard a lesson on it.
Yeah.
I think it was just something I picked up based upon conversations.
Yeah.
So I'm curious as to how this is going to go. This is fun. Let's get going.
So I think we can go to Ecclesiastes 12:7 and discern some things about what happens when we die. The writer says, and the dust returns to the earth as it was, and the spirit returns to God who gave it. I think there's some obvious implications of that there's more to us than just a body. We have a soul or a spirit, and that at death, those things separate. Body goes back to the earth, we get buried, and our spirit goes back to God. So I think Scripture is pretty clear on that. I think most of us can agree. Where I want to go for most of this episode, though, is Luke 16, or at least I want to talk about the rich man and Lazarus, because I think that it gives us some insight into what happens after we die. I want to read Luke 16 verses 19 through 24. Yeah, let's do that. There was a rich man who was clothed in purple and fine linen, and who feasted sumptuously every day. And at his gate was laid a poor man named Lazarus, covered with sores, who desired to be fed with what fell from the rich man's table. Moreover, even the dogs came and licked his sores. The poor man died and was carried by the angels to Abraham's side. The rich man also died and was buried, and in Hades, being in torment, he lifted up his eyes and saw Abraham far off, and Lazarus at his side, and he called out, Father Abraham, have mercy on me, and says, send Lazarus to dip the end of his finger in water and cool my tongue, for I'm in anguish in this flame. But Abraham said, child, remember that you in your lifetime received your good things, and Lazarus in like manner bad things, but now he is comforted, and you are in anguish. And besides all this, between us and you, a great chasm has been fixed, in order that those who would pass from here to you may not be able, and none may cross over there from us. All right, so there's kind of a lot there, but I think one of the things that we gather from that is that we're conscious after death. Lazarus and the rich man are both conscious after death, and that there is a place, or perhaps two places, where people go immediately when they die. One is a place of torment, and one is not. It is a place of comfort. Do you think that this story gives us a literal glimpse into the afterlife, or do you think that this is just figurative and meant to teach some principles?
How big is Abraham's bosom? So if we're going to get literal, so I think it's clearly figurative, but when we say figurative, that doesn't mean we dismiss it. It is talking about something very real.
Yeah, maybe that's where I was going.
That's where I kind of come down with, like, describing as in Abraham's bosom. Like, well, let's think about that a little bit.
That was
clearly figurative.
That was an interesting question to ask to get us to your point. But how big is Abraham's bosom?
Like a large bosom. It's
a
pretty big bosom.
He's very bosomy.
Very bosomy. One of the things I saw in here that I thought was interesting too is it seems as if they recognize and know who these people are.
Yeah.
And that might then answer that question as far as if people have will I know family members? Will I recognize people? Will I understand, the difference between people?
Yeah. So, and that there's a separation between these two places, and no one can cross it, right? I think that comes up here too. Here's a question, and this was a question that my wife posed is, well, so did judgment already occur? I mean, because Lazarus is in a place of comfort and the rich man is in a place of torment. So
how did they get through my answer with this?
Yeah,
even though I like said, you're the one that previously studied this.
Yeah.
I think that there would have to be two judgments.
Okay. Yeah.
I think there would have to be an initial sorting of sorts.
Yeah.
I mean, there would have to be an initial judgment.
Yeah.
But I don't think that is the day of judgment.
Right.
I think that would be different when Jesus comes back. But then again, one of the things I love about God and the things he knows is, I mean, he has a different perspective on time than we even do.
Oh, sure.
So how do we know that it's not immediate once it happens?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, like the idea, I don't want to throw that into like a question of like whether or not there is, but time in heaven and time in these places, I don't know that it's
Does Abraham feel
one to one here?
Speaking of Abraham, does he feel like he's been there for 3,000 years now? And so that's one that's hard to find a definitive answer to. Yeah. I think we need to look at what is this parable teaching? What is its intended purpose? And it's in the context. You look at chapter 15, the lost coin, and the parable, or the prodigal, and it's all about the way the Jews looked at others and the poor, and this idea. I don't know how they missed Job somehow, but they still had this idea that if you're rich, then you must be blessed by God, and if you're poor, well, it's because you're a bad person or something like that.
Yeah.
And Jesus is showing them like, look, you can be the richest person in the world, and Job should have told you that, and you can still end up like a dog.
Yeah.
And you'd look at this rich guy who is unnamed because in the story he's really unimportant. He's a loser.
Yeah.
But they would look at him and say, wait, he's on the outside looking in.
Yeah. How's that the case?
And so it's all about teaching them that point that they would esteem the poor man and rich man one way, but through the lens of death and from God's perspective, it's completely subverted their expectations. So is this passage intended to be instructional for us about all of our questions about the afterlife?
Great point, Kyle.
No.
Sure.
But I don't want to say we can't derive some conclusions about the afterlife from it. And that's a fair question.
Yeah.
So
you bring up a good point, because the context of this parable isn't necessarily to teach them, hey, here's exactly what the afterlife is about. But I do think that it does give us a glimpse into what the afterlife is about.
Oh, and there's definitely some takeaways we can get from it.
Yeah, because I guess one of the biggest takeaways I've always taken is you can't go back. And
no take-backs.
We use this in talking about whether ghosts exist. And I always have this now, like back into my brain is what's the purpose of a ghost? And, what are they doing?
They have unfinished business.
Yeah, how is that even possible?
Well, this rich man had unfinished business, and Abraham said, no, there's a great chasm.
But then he wanted to warn him and like these ideas that you can't.
Yeah.
Their life is their own, and they have to learn this. And you had a time where you could have.
They had all the same information. They had all the same information you had, Mr. Rich Man.
And so I think that one's always been bigger in my head of the story because that just stood out more. That the principle there is it's the whole Jacob Marley bit. Like you can't do that though. Like they had their chance. Like you can't actually go and warn them, even though you want to save them and warn them. And that there is that divide.
Yeah. So here's a question though: is where Lazarus and the rich man are? Is this a waiting place, or is this heaven and hell? Maybe we'll answer that.
It's called purgatory, isn't it? Isn't that what the Catholics call it?
Well, that's what the Catholics would call it. I don't know a lot about their teaching on purgatory. Something I find interesting is what Jesus says to the thief on the cross. He said to him, "Truly I say to you, today you will be with me in paradise." So what is paradise? Like, is that the waiting place where Lazarus is, or is that actually heaven?
My understanding of the idea of purgatory was it's a waiting place for purification.
Yeah.
They believe that is a place you need to be there to purify, but we would believe that Jesus' sacrifice on the cross, and that's already been done. Like and it's because in Revelation it talks about you cannot go there unpure, So as if there's a place for that. But I think that's also just people conflating these messages of, do you go there directly, or is there like a waiting room?
Yeah. So let's talk about the final judgment and resurrection. So in John chapter 5, verse 28 and 29, Jesus says, "Do not marvel at this, for an hour is coming when all who are in the tombs will hear his voice and come out, those who have done good to the resurrection of life, and those who have done evil to the resurrection of judgment." So there will be a resurrection following death. So we're all going to be resurrected. But where we go is going to depend on those who have done good to the resurrection of life, those who have done evil to the resurrection of judgment. So this kind of brings up with me an interesting thought. When I think of resurrection, I remember growing up thinking that if we're going to be resurrected, we're going to be resurrected as a spirit, and like a spirit, kind of like a ghost. What do you guys think when we're going to be resurrected? What do you think our resurrected forms will be like? New body?
I don't know if physical is the right word in the sense that we know it, but material. I think 1 Corinthians makes it clear, 1 Corinthians 15, that the spirit, the idea of death isn't a separation of the spirit from the body, that we are now some sort of disembodied entity. There is some sort of material that to combine with the spirit.
Yeah.
But 1 Corinthians 15, again, the Bible gives us some clarity, but not complete clarity. It simply describes that we're sown perishable, but we're raised imperishable. Sown in weakness, raised in power.
Yeah.
And so it rather than telling us precisely, and I think some of this too is like Paul in trying not to boast. I think maybe I lean into the scripture too much, but this one has always spoken loudly to me on these kinds of questions. In 2 Corinthians 12, when Paul says, I know a man, I think he's pretending to be humble here about himself. 14 years ago, whether in the body I do not know, or whether out of the body I do not know, God knows, but such one was caught up in a third heaven. This man saw, what do you say? He was caught up into paradise and heard inexpressible words, which is not lawful for a man to utter. Inexpressible words. I think what Paul is trying to say there is there were things that I couldn't describe to you if I tried.
Yeah.
Like trying to describe the color red to someone who's been blind their whole life. Well, it's like orange, but they don't know what orange is. Like, how do you do that?
Yeah.
How does Paul describe the things he saw and heard and experienced in this vision? He doesn't even know if he was in body or not.
Yeah.
And so there's always that element of, I don't think we could even fully understand if God told, I don't think there's a way for God to explain it to us until we experience it, but he can put it in relational terms, very much better, or corruptible versus incorruptible, perishable versus imperishable,
right?
Weak versus powerful. And so, I do think 1 Corinthians 15 clearly teaches Jesus was the first fruits, it says. Mm-hmm. And when he was resurrected, they still recognized him.
Yeah.
He had a body. He even ate food with them. And if he's the first fruits, it implies that our resurrection, we go through a similar resurrection as him.
Yeah.
So then explain 2 Corinthians 5:8, where it says, yes, we are of good courage, and we would rather be away from the body and at home with the Lord. Is it just saying the body as just clearly, I mean, if you look in the Greek there, say it's purely a physical form.
This body that we're in.
So it's talking about a new body.
Yeah. Well, and that's another thing in 1 Corinthians 15. It talks about like birds in the air, that there's one body for birds that are in the air. Well, they have a body that's suited for flying through the sky. Fish have a body that's suited for their environment in the water. This body is not suited for being in the presence of God or being in spiritual places. But the body that we are raised with, and that's the implied teaching there in 1 Corinthians 15, is that whatever that body is, whatever material it is, it's not of this earth, and it is suited for that environment, for that life. I think that's what 1 Corinthians 15 is trying to tell us. So when that 2 Corinthians passage you talked about, I think it's talking about this mortal form that we're in that is destined to corruption. Mm-hmm. And we long to be, because this body can't take us there. So we want to be separated from it, but it doesn't mean that we're just, again, some sort of gaseous spirit.
That's how I.
Well, and that's the thing is our perspectives are heavily skewed by media and proposed perspectives of people trying to understand biblical concepts over time and drawings and animations and
most people's understanding of hell is based on Dante.
Sure. Yeah.
I don't even know who that is, but I just know that Dante's Inferno, that's where people get their perception of hell more so than the Bible. And a lot of that's because the Bible doesn't scratch all of our itches.
I think it looks a lot more
all
like
of our curiosities.
The DMV, but
I think it looks like a Taylor Swift concert.
There you go.
I always thought that hell was like created by the devil. And then I don't remember when it was, but it was as an adult, I was reading Revelation. It was like, no, hell was created by God for the devil. That like makes it that much scarier.
Well, Matthew 25 says that it is prepared for the devil and his angels.
Yeah.
It's not his bat cave. It's not his secret lair.
Yeah.
It's his prison, the lake of fire. He's cast into it, and all those that worship the beast in Revelation cast into it. But it is his punishment. It is his torment. And if you follow him, you're caught up in it. It's kind of like Mustafar is what it reminds me of.
That's what is Mustafar?
That was Darth Vader's castle he built. It's the place where he got his legs and arm chopped off and he burnt all of his skin off.
Oh, okay.
Gotcha. So he made it his secret lair.
Sorry. I just don't know.
This is why you're not invited to D&D.
This is why I'm not. I don't even know. I remember that scene.
Simplest things.
I remember that scene. It was pretty gnarly.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that we've established that we have a soul and we have a body. When we die, our body goes to the earth. Our soul goes to God. That there are two potential places it can go: a place of torment and not a place of torment, or paradise, and that there is some sort of judgment. Hebrews 9:27 tells us, and just as it is appointed for man to die once, and after that comes the judgment. So this is where Ashley and I got into, our conversation here about judgment. When does it occur? In Hebrews, it tells us after we die, we are judged. But really, I guess my question is it immediate? Is it an immediate judgment, or is this something that occurs, that final judgment occurs later on down the line, and it all occurs, we all go before God and stand there individually?
I'm going to say something and then the podcast will be over after this.
Okay. All right.
Does it really matter if we have to wait or if it's instant?
That is a good...
Thank you for listening to the Exhorter podcast.
That's a good question.
I mean, I'd like to know if there's a lightning lane, please.
A lightning lane?
If you paid your penance
to Disney. Yeah. No. What I was thinking is could both be true? Can everyone who has died and is dying, they all immediately go to paradise, and then when Jesus comes, everyone who's alive, they're judged immediately, And could the judgment be both? It's like the flood killing everyone on the planet at that point. Like that was a judgment on people who are living on the planet. So can't that judgment be when Jesus comes again, judges everyone who's still alive? Could it be a combination of the two? And at that point, then it gets into Kyle's point was, if not, what's the point?
Ashley made the point that there's got to be some preliminary judgment at least, so that because there's two separate places at least that we see in the story of the rich man
a sorting
and Lazarus.
hat.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I think I'll just say this. Chronology, I think, is the fuzziest part of the afterlife.
Sure.
Yeah. Like when things happen.
As my comment earlier, though, implied, is I think it's also one of the least important, but it is something that seems of prime curiosity to us.
Yeah.
But I will say, from Lazarus and the rich man, it didn't seem like, for their point of view, whether they had gone through the final judgment or they're still waiting for it, didn't seem like they're in suspense as far as what the outcome is. So I would say, John, to your point, it's probably not that different from the concept we think of, where you get arrested and you're put in jail, but then, and you're convicted, but then you're awaiting sentencing. And so maybe that final judgment day is more like sentencing, where it just becomes final. But do you really think it's for God's benefit? Like I can present my case and maybe there's evidence God didn't consider, and I might persuade him. And no, I feel like when we die, there's no suspense as far as where we're going for eternity.
Yeah.
And so if we're sitting around waiting for 1,000 years, it's not like we're in suspense, like, well, will I get into heaven or not? I think you're going to know.
And that's when we imprint our own perspective of life and time and everything on this, where it'd be like, well, am I just sitting there for hundreds of years and thousands of years being bored, or what am I doing during that time? Stuff.
What am I doing? I'm eating pizza and not getting fat.
Yeah. Well,
that's what.
But I'm assuming
heaven is.
When it talks about no tears in heaven, no sorrows, right? I think of this idea that there's a lot of things I care about right now on earth. I'm just simply not going to care about. It's going to be a whole new thing. I won't need to care about those things, because these things will be established and they'll be understood. And I think it's like the idea of, if I'm there and a loved one of mine isn't, am I going to have this heartbroken loss? And can I even enjoy being there?
Yeah.
We talk about like the different songs and stuff that talk about, like, would I even want to be there if someone isn't there? And I think the answer is yes.
Yeah.
You will.
Yeah.
You may not be able to conceive of that idea now, but that's kind of the hope I have in my thoughts and head is when I'm there and I have that understanding, I won't care about these things that I care about now.
As you were talking, I was thinking, like, what are we going to do when we're there? I mean, I know that we're going to praise God, but it's just, will we think about time? Will there be time like we know it now? I don't know. But to bring it back to the question, is judgment immediate, or does it happen? Does final judgment happen on one day or at one time period? And I'm kind of the mind that it happens all at once. Like you said, Kyle, I don't think there's any secrets about where you're going. Like there's a waiting place, and if you're in the waiting place of torment, you're probably not going to get out. But when I think about like final judgment, I think about Revelation 20, and it says, "And I saw the dead, great and small, standing before the throne, and books were opened, and the dead were judged by what was written in the books according to what they had done. And if anyone's name wasn't found written in the book of life, he was thrown into the lake of fire." And so I get this picture there of like, we're all going to come before God, and what's written in those books, we're going to talk about it. And if my name's not in the book of life, then I'm not going where I want to go. So when I think of judgment, I think of it all happens on, or final judgment happens on one day. Well, here's a question. How does knowing about our future judgment affect our present life and choices?
Nate, you started us in Ecclesiastes. I'd like to go back there. In Ecclesiastes 7, how does this affect us? He says, "Better to go to a house of mourning than to the house of feasting, for that is the end of all men, and the living take it to heart." A friend of mine named Carl Romine, he phrased it this way. He said, "Whenever you have a major life decision, go ponder it as you're walking through a cemetery and look at all the dates on the tombstone and put it in that perspective." And we don't like to talk about the fact that death and taxes are the most inevitable things, but when we find ourselves forced to face that reality, it sobers us up quick and makes us think a lot more clearly about our goals and objectives in life.
That always happens when it touches close to home with us, with friends, with family and stuff. We generally go through those motions of thinking about what happens when it happens to us, and what we'll leave behind, and what are the things we wanted to say or will want to have done and said to people. We kind of all do that kind of self-reflection. I think that's purposely put there for us and in our hearts to do so. That's smart.
Kyle, that passage that you brought up, I think is a really great passage for us to consider when we think about judgment and the fact that I am going to die. There will be a judgment, and what I do here matters. And I think that's what we do. Like I imagine it sitting in the front row at a funeral versus sitting in the front row at a wedding. What am I thinking about? And when I'm in the front row at a funeral, I am thinking about like the deceased, but I'm also thinking about my life and what I'm doing with it, because ultimately it matters, because we're going to be judged.
Kyle, but we didn't get your hot take on, do you think that it's initial judgment or judgment later on, or a little bit of both? Hybrid judgment? Do you like hybrid judgment? Do you like initial judgment? Do you like postponed judgment? Do you like waiting place? Do you like time has no meaning?
I don't care.
Well,
it really is a non-issue to me.
Are you saying you don't care because you don't have a definitive perspective from the Bible?
How does that change the way I live now? How does that affect?
No, I don't
how does
think
that affect my day?
I think it's implications.
I'm curious about it, but that's my genuine answer. Not to be flippant, but like it really is a non-issue to me as far as what the timeline of it looks like.
Yeah.
All I know is that the way it's described is when Paul is writing to Timothy, and he said, or to the Philippians rather, in Philippians chapter 1, he talks about, well, if I live on, it's good for you, and I think that would be great. If I die, that's gain to me, because I go and be with Christ, and it's very much better. And we look at other passages like 1 Thessalonians 4 that talks about how we grieve the loss of others, but not the way the world does.
Yeah.
It strongly implies this idea of reunion. Genesis 37, Jacob, talking about his son, that Joseph, that he believed to be dead, said, well, I can go down to the grave to be with my son.
Yeah.
And David, similarly, in 2 Samuel 12, talked about that too, that when his child died, and he cleaned himself up, and he said, well, I can't bring him back from the dead, but I can go to him.
Yeah.
So the way it's described is like, we look forward to, it's a reunion with loved ones. It's going to be with God, as Paul described it. When and how those things play out doesn't matter to me, but it sounds like that's today you'll be with me in paradise. And I think when I die, I put my faith in Jesus, and I'm not afraid of what's awaiting me.
Yeah.
Death is just a pathway to greater living.
So the timeline isn't perfectly clear, but the end result is really what matters, whether or not we're in heaven with God or not.
Yeah. I'm certainly curious about it, but
I was just inching to the fact that you didn't think that there was a definitive biblical perspective about it.
I think you can extrapolate some things, but again, I think a lot of times these teachings they're not meant. We just need to be careful, because they're not meant to tell us all the facts and answer all the questions about heaven. They're meant to teach a specific point. We can derive some secondary conclusions, but sometimes I think if we look a little too hard, we might. I don't know. We might not arrive at exactly the precise conclusion that is the reality.
I think that there are some things that are really clear about death and what happens when we die. There's a separation of soul from body. That soul is going to go back to God. There are two places we are going to go, and there will be a judgment. And that judgment is based on what we have done in this life, which makes what we do in this life important and valuable. So I hope that if you're listening to this today, you're considering what it is you're doing with your life, because what you do matters and will impact your eternity.
Yeah, Nate, I think that's a really good way to wrap it up. In Revelation chapter 20, verse 11, John describes a great white throne and him who sat on it, from whose face the whole earth and the heaven fled away, and there was found no place for them. And I saw the dead, small and great, standing before God, and books were open, and another book was open, which is the book of life. And the dead were judged according to their works, by the things which were written in the books. So you're absolutely right. The way we live matters greatly as far as how we will live for the eternal portion of our existence, so to speak. So your life is short. Make it count.
Amen.
All right. Thank you for listening. We appreciate you guys tuning in each and every week, almost every week. We have a hard time getting our schedules together sometimes, but we appreciate you guys listening. We appreciate your feedback. A lot of our episodes recently have been from listener feedback and suggestions. Keep it coming. Want to see you in the comment section. Feel free to like and share if this has been helpful. We'd love to get more listeners, and we'll have a good week and see you all next time.